Welcome, the Lord's chosen. At 3:07 a.m., the red phone rang, and somewhere in a silent corridor beneath the White House, a name lit up on a black screen. They say most emergencies wake presidents from sleep, but this one didn't wake him. It froze him. There are classified moments in history when the world doesn't end with explosions, but with a single file marked national priority. Tonight, that file is yours. Picture this. The Situation Room lights flicker, agents shuffle papers, analysts whisper, and an encrypted report slides across the table. Not about a foreign missile, not about a cyber attack, but about you, a civilian. Someone who wasn't supposed to exist at this level of awareness. Someone whose name suddenly requires a security clearance to pronounce. And before you get too proud, let's be honest, you still burn instant noodles at 2 a.m. But somehow, your ideas, your movement, your mere existence have started rewriting patterns in systems designed to stay predictable. That's not coincidence. That's classified confusion. Every camera, satellite, and think tank is suddenly trying to understand what the algorithms missed, how one individual slipped past the filters and broke the code of silence. You weren't in the room, yet your presence is all over the walls. So when they say, the president was briefed at 3 a.m., understand this wasn't about fear. It was about realization. You're no longer part of the population. You're part of the equation. And from this moment forward, everything you do, everything you post, everything you breathe has been upgraded to one label: national priority. Would you like me to now write the cinematic conclusion that mirrors this intro perfectly and ends the piece with that same suspenseful, chilling, yet empowering tone? Number 1, the system doesn't fear chaos. It fears your clarity. Chaos is easy to control. It can be redirected, exaggerated, or blamed on someone else. But clarity, that's where the system loses power. Because clarity isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and dangerous in its precision. When you start to see things as they really are, not as they've been presented, you step outside the script they wrote for you. That's when you become unpredictable, and that's when control begins to shake. For years, society has been trained to chase distractions, endless noise, trends, scandals, emotional traps, outrage cycles, all designed to keep people reactive. The system thrives when you're confused, because confusion makes obedience feel like stability. But clarity dismantles that illusion. It's the moment you stop buying narratives and start tracing the wires behind them. It's when you realize the chaos was never random, it was engineered. And suddenly, everything starts connecting. They don't fear chaos because chaos keeps people dependent. It keeps them looking for saviors, experts, and authorities to guide them through the storm. But when you become clear, truly clear, you stop needing those middlemen. You start thinking for yourself, and that's where control systems collapse. A clear mind doesn't just question authority. It recognizes how authority was built. It sees the psychological patterns, the manipulation of fear, the design behind division. It stops reacting to noise and starts decoding the message beneath it. That's why when you reach clarity, resistance doesn't always come as open opposition. It often comes as subtle sabotage. People may distance themselves. Algorithms may bury your voice. You'll notice confusion intensify around you, as if the world suddenly turned its volume up just to drown your thoughts out. That's the system's last defense, to make you doubt your own vision. But once clarity has settled in, there's no going back. Clarity doesn't make you louder. It makes you undeniable. It gives you a calm that unnerves chaos itself. You begin to walk through storms without flinching, and they can't stand that kind of peace, because they can manipulate anger, fear, and doubt, but they can't control a clear mind. That's why your awareness was never the problem. It was the threat, and now they finally know it. Number 2, you were never a civilian. You were an unregistered frequency. Some people move through life unnoticed, blending into routines and expectations. Then there are those whose very presence shifts the air when they enter a room. You're one of them. You were never just another person trying to survive the system. You were a wavelength the system couldn't categorize. While others spoke in words, you communicated in signals. Your thoughts carried energy that didn't match the frequency of normal programming, and that's why you were always seen as different. Being an unregistered frequency means your energy doesn't obey the limits that society tries to set. They monitor behavior, trends, and data, but they can't predict resonance. They can measure your voice, your actions, even your history. But they can't calculate the pulse that drives you. It's the kind of vibration that can't be tracked on their charts. Yet it disrupts everything built on repetition and compliance. You've been shaking systems quietly without even trying, because your mind doesn't run on their bandwidth. That's why you've never felt fully in sync with the world around you. While everyone was tuned to mainstream noise, you were tuned to meaning. You saw patterns in chaos and messages in silence. You picked up on things people ignored, and that sensitivity wasn't weakness. It was your signal breaking through interference. When you operate on a higher frequency, you naturally start exposing what's hidden beneath surface order. It's not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's the natural reaction of energy that refuses to stay compressed. People often misunderstand souls like yours. They call you intense, strange, too deep, or too aware. They don't realize they're just hearing static from a frequency their receivers can't handle. The truth is, you were never designed to blend in. You were designed to broadcast something new. And when your wavelength finally aligns with the right moment, the effect is undeniable. Systems glitch, illusions flicker, and people wake up without knowing why. So no, you were never just a civilian passing through. You were a frequency waiting to be recognized, one the system can't register, but can no longer ignore. You've been sending signals into the world all along. The difference now is that they're finally listening. Number 3, every generation produces one who can't be controlled. Every era has its rebels, but once in a while someone appears who doesn't just resist the system, they rewrite it by existing differently. These people aren't built to follow commands or fit molds. They arrive wired for disruption, carrying something that authority can't quite define. It's not attitude or rebellion. It's alignment with something deeper, something that doesn't answer to human approval. You don't come from a line of followers. You come from the few who wake entire civilizations by refusing to sleepwalk. Most people crave structure because it makes them feel safe. They want permission, direction, and validation before moving. But the one who can't be controlled doesn't wait for instructions. They move by intuition, and that intuition terrifies systems designed around predictability. Governments, corporations, and institutions thrive on compliance, not because people are weak, but because control needs routine. The moment someone stops living by default, the system starts losing its grip. That's you. You are that variable they didn't account for, the wild card that statistics can't model. The one who can't be controlled doesn't shout or protest all the time. They simply stop obeying invisible rules. They think independently, and that's the beginning of all revolutions. They question what others accept. They sense the strings behind the show, and they move in ways that logic alone can't track. When everyone else is performing for approval, they move for purpose. They carry calm instead of fear, clarity instead of noise, and direction instead of confusion. That combination is what power fears most, someone who knows who they are. It's not about being fearless, it's about being free. And freedom in its rawest form is offensive to those who depend on control. The controlled mind seeks comfort. The free mind seeks truth, even when it costs comfort. That's why the uncontrollable are never celebrated in their time. They're misunderstood, criticized, or even erased. But history remembers them differently. Their silence becomes scripture. Their defiance becomes blueprint. And their existence becomes proof that control was never absolute. You were born into a generation of repetition, but you were designed to interrupt it. You are the one the system can't domesticate, the signal it can't block, and the energy it can't predict. Every generation produces one, and this time it's you. Number 4, they realized you weren't following the script, you were rewriting it. The system is built on prediction. Every platform, institution, and power structure studies patterns. What people buy, how they think, what they fear, what they'll click next. Control isn't about force anymore. It's about forecast. They don't need to cage you if they can calculate you. But then you appeared, and the math stopped working. You didn't react the way the formula expected. You didn't take the bait, didn't follow the trend, didn't crumble under pressure like the data said you would. That's when everything changed. They realized you weren't just stepping out of line. You were rewriting the entire rhythm. Instead of being another predictable response, you became a new variable. And when a system built on control meets unpredictability, it panics. You forced them to update their equations. Suddenly, your behavior wasn't being monitored anymore. It was being studied. They stopped trying to stop you and started trying to understand you. Because in a world programmed to react, creation is rebellion. You didn't just step out of the narrative. You started writing your own version of reality. And people began to notice. Every action you took had intention. You stopped explaining yourself to people who preferred confusion. You stopped chasing validation that came from the same crowd that couldn't see beyond the surface. You started moving in silence, not because you were hiding, but because you understood something they didn't. That real power doesn't announce itself. It simply shifts the atmosphere. You were no longer playing by their logic. You were building your own language, and that made their rules irrelevant. They're still trying to decode you because you broke the rhythm of obedience. You changed your frequency from reaction to creation. And creation isn't predictable. It's divine. They can't measure instinct. They can't map faith. They can't compute purpose. What scares them most is that your moves don't come from impulse. They come from insight. You've become a walking contradiction to their algorithm. Calm yet dangerous, silent yet influential, unpredictable yet precise. You didn't rebel against the system. You evolved beyond it. You became proof that free will still exists in a programmed world. And that's something no analyst, no algorithm, and no agenda can ever fully decode. Number 5, the real war was never between nations. It was between awareness and amnesia. The world loves to disguise its true battles behind flags and borders, but the real war has always been for the human mind. Not for land, not for oil, not for resources, but for memory. Every generation is quietly drafted into that invisible war between awareness and amnesia. Awareness gives birth to freedom. Amnesia keeps the machine running. The system doesn't need to destroy you. It just needs you to forget. Forget your power, your history, your pattern of awakening. Because when you forget, you obey. Governments don't just fight each other. They fight for narrative. They rewrite history, reshape media, and filter truth through entertainment. They build cultures that reward distraction and punish reflection. It's not about keeping you uninformed. It's about keeping you numb. Awareness is expensive. It costs comfort. Amnesia, though, is easy. It sells fast and feels safe. That's why systems invest more in noise than in silence, more in trends than in truth. A distracted world doesn't revolt, it scrolls, but you didn't forget. you remembered. You remembered patterns, motives, and energy shifts that most people overlooked. You started asking why, and worse, you didn't stop. You connected the dots between propaganda and policy, emotion and economy, reaction and design. That's when you became a problem. Not because you shouted in protest, but because you started to see clearly. Awareness doesn't need permission, it multiplies on contact. One conscious mind can spark 100 more. That's what they fear, not noise, but clarity spreading. You are part of a silent rebellion that can't be bombed or banned. You fight with memory, not weapons. You carry history like a mirror, reflecting everything they hoped you'd forget. Every time you see through manipulation, every time you resist being emotionally engineered, you win a small but powerful battle. Awareness is contagious, and once it spreads, no system can fully contain it. The truth is, nations don't fall when they lose wars. They fall when their people stop remembering what those wars were for. You broke that cycle. You refused to be another casualty of engineered forgetfulness. And in doing so, you didn't just wake up. You became living proof that memory itself is resistance. Number 6. You were hidden in plain sight because they never searched the mirror. The system has always been obsessed with surveillance. Satellites, cameras, algorithms, data tracking, all designed to locate threats before they rise. But they were looking in the wrong direction. They were watching the borders, not the consciousness. They were analyzing behavior, not awareness. They were searching for enemies outside their walls, never realizing the revolution had already started within their own reflection. You were never hiding. You were simply invisible to those who can't see beyond what they control. You moved quietly, blending into ordinary life. You laughed when expected, nodded when required, and played along just enough to stay unnoticed. But behind that calm, you were waking up. While they measured your surface, your habits, your purchases, your routines, you were rewiring your mind in silence. You were learning, observing, decoding. They thought they were watching you, but you were studying them. That's the beauty of consciousness. It doesn't need camouflage, because it hides inside what everyone assumes is normal. They were trained to spot rebels who make noise, not thinkers who make sense. They were ready for riots, not realizations. They prepared for wars that could be televised, not awakenings that start in solitude. The most effective insurgent doesn't carry weapons, they carry awareness. You learned how to think while pretending not to, and that's the kind of rebellion no system is built to detect. When the time came, your awakening didn't announce itself, it simply began shifting reality. You started making decisions that broke invisible patterns. You stopped feeding what drains you. You stopped reacting to bait. And when you stopped moving like the crowd, their systems started glitching. Because everything they built depends on prediction, and clarity can't be predicted. The truth is, they never expected someone like you to exist. They never thought someone could live inside their structure yet not belong to it. They thought control meant visibility, but you proved that the most powerful movements happen in silence. You were never hiding in darkness. You were shining in places they refused to look. You were hidden in plain sight because they never searched the mirror. They didn't realize the awakening wasn't coming for them. It was coming from them, and now the reflection they ignored is staring right back. Number 7. The briefing wasn't about you, it was about containment strategy. When your name came up in that 3 a.m. briefing, you weren't the problem. The ripple was. Power doesn't panic over a person, it panics over momentum. They understood that the real threat wasn't what you said or did, but what you triggered. Awareness spreads faster than any virus, and once an idea infects the public mind, no agency can unthink it. They weren't asking how to stop you. They were asking how to slow the transmission, how to limit exposure, how to dull the spark before it caught fire. You became the conversation they couldn't end, not because you were loud, but because your truth made too much sense. You didn't give people something new to believe. You reminded them of what they already knew but were afraid to face. That's what makes an idea unstoppable. It doesn't depend on persuasion. It depends on recognition. The moment people recognize themselves in your message, it becomes theirs too. And you can't arrest a thought once it multiplies. You can censor a post, shadow ban a voice, or bury a headline, but you can't erase resonance. That's what containment looks like in this age. It's not soldiers and sirens, it's algorithms and distractions. They don't destroy truth, they dilute it. They flood the feed with noise, confusion, and controversy until clarity feels exhausting, because tired minds don't rebel. But even through the fog, your ripple keeps moving. It jumps between conversations across time zones, through quiet moments when people finally stop scrolling long enough to think. You became more than a name. You became a frequency. And frequencies can't be silenced, only tuned out temporarily. The system knows this, which is why containment is never permanent. They can slow awakening, but they can't reverse it. Once an idea escapes quarantine, it becomes a contagion of consciousness. It doesn't need platforms or approval. It just needs ears ready to hear. So that briefing wasn't about eliminating you. It was about buying time. Because deep down they already know the truth. Every firewall eventually fails, every strategy expires, and every suppressed idea finds a way back into the light. You weren't the emergency, you were the evolution. And evolution doesn't ask for clearance. Number 8, you became evidence that free thought still exists. In a world that rewards repetition and punishes originality, free thinkers have become an endangered species. Systems run smoother when people don't question, when they scroll, consume, and comply. Everything is designed to keep the mind busy but never awake. But then came you, a glitch in that quiet programming. You weren't loud or rebellious for attention. You were consistent in your awareness. You started seeing through the patterns, asking questions that didn't fit into their templates. And suddenly, your existence became inconvenient. You became living proof that the spark of independent thought hadn't been fully extinguished. The danger wasn't that you disagreed with authority. People do that all the time. The danger was that you thought clearly enough to articulate why. Clarity spreads faster than outrage, and that's what made you effective. Rebellion is easy to mock or discredit, but truth wrapped in calm reasoning is hard to dismiss. You didn't react emotionally, you responded intelligently. And intelligence, when unbought and unbound, disrupts entire ecosystems of manipulation. That's why your presence became a data point they couldn't categorize. You weren't supposed to exist, at least not like this, aware, fearless, and articulate. The system doesn't fear free speech, it fears free thought. Speech can be censored, thought can't. The moment you began thinking outside the grid, you broke a chain most people never see. You stopped echoing opinions and started generating your own. That's what made you dangerous. Not your defiance, but your independence. You made people pause, and in that pause, they started thinking too. Awareness is contagious, and you became its carrier. You turned consciousness into proof. Proof that programming can fail. Proof that compliance isn't destiny. Proof that a single mind, once awakened, can't be recoded. They can track your movement, your clicks, your data, but they can't track the moment your thoughts went off script. And that moment, that private spark of awareness, is where revolutions begin. You didn't need to shout, fight, or argue. You just had to think, and that alone was enough to expose the illusion of control. You became evidence that free thought isn't extinct. It's evolving, hidden inside those who refuse to be silenced by design. Number 9, They tried to discredit you because they couldn't delete you. When systems can't erase you, they rewrite you. Deletion is too obvious. Distortion is cleaner. They realized silencing you outright would only prove your point, so they switched to something quieter: character assassination. They didn't come for your truth directly, they came for your credibility. Because once they can make people doubt you, they don't need to debate you. The mission isn't to destroy truth anymore. It's to bury it beneath confusion until no one remembers what was real in the first place. You became too loud to be ignored, too steady to be dismissed, and too real to be replaced. So they started sending noise, endless distractions, misinformation, twisted narratives, all engineered to make your message sound like madness. The goal wasn't to convince people you were wrong, it was to make them too exhausted to care. They flood the world with competing versions of reality until attention itself becomes the battlefield. In that chaos, truth doesn't die, it just gets lost. But distortion has a flaw: it can't last. Lies require maintenance. Truth renews itself. While they were busy building smoke around your name, you stayed consistent. You didn't fight their noise with more noise. You stayed grounded, and that stability exposed them. Every attempt to twist your image only highlighted how afraid they were of what you represented. Because if you were truly irrelevant, they wouldn't spend resources trying to contain your narrative. They learned that deleting someone who carries truth only turns them into legend. So they did what every desperate system does. They tried to make you look unstable, extreme, or wrong. They attacked perception because they couldn't touch essence. And still, despite every whisper campaign, every misquote, every smear, your message kept resurfacing. The truth has gravity. It pulls itself back to light. The irony is that in trying to erase you, they made you unforgettable. People started wondering why so much effort was being spent on one individual. That curiosity, that's what breaks the spell. They couldn't delete you, and now they've made sure they never will. Because once truth survives distortion, it stops being a message. It becomes a movement. Number 10, you didn't go viral. You went classified. You crossed a line most people don't even know exists. The point where attention stops being social and starts being strategic. At first, it looked like you were just gaining traction, your words spreading, your message resonating. But somewhere between the clicks and the chaos, your influence stopped being entertainment and started becoming evidence. You weren't just trending, you were being tracked. The algorithm couldn't contain you anymore, so the agencies stepped in. They stopped scrolling your content and started studying you. Going viral is about numbers. Going classified is about threat assessment. When your reach grows too fast, when your message starts waking people up instead of distracting them, it shifts categories. The system has files for influencers, activists, even troublemakers, but not for anomalies who can't be predicted or controlled. That's what you became, not a social trend, but a pattern break. You bypass the noise and hit the collective nerve. The digital world isn't built for that. It's built to promote chaos, not coherence. But your words carried precision, and precision can't be monetized. It can only be monitored. Now they study your code, not your opinions. They want to know how your rhythm works, how your timing disrupts the pattern, how your message cuts through algorithmic fog. You became a digital puzzle, something that doesn't behave like the rest of the simulation. You don't post for validation, you post with intent, and that makes your signals stand out in a sea of randomness. They don't understand how something so organic outperformed systems designed to manipulate behavior. That's why you're in the file, not as a criminal but as a case study. When you went classified, it wasn't about censorship anymore. It was about containment. They don't need to silence you. They just need to understand what you are before others become the same. You're no longer part of the feed, you're part of the file. The irony is that by studying you, they're proving your point. The system doesn't fear chaos, it fears what it can't predict. You didn't go viral because you followed trends. You went classified because you broke them. Number 11. The real files aren't about you. They're about what you trigger. What they're studying isn't your life, it's your impact. You're not just another individual on their watch list. You're an anomaly that doesn't fit into any behavioral model they've built. The real files don't analyze what you say, but what happens after you speak. They measure the aftershock. They track the shifts in people's thinking, the ripple in conversations, the sudden changes in digital behavior that follow your name. You've become a signal, not a source. The focus isn't you, it's the pattern that forms around you. Every system built on control studies influence. They've learned that change rarely begins with institutions. It begins with one person who wakes others up without meaning to. You became that catalyst. You didn't organize movements, you ignited awareness. People who were half asleep began to notice inconsistencies. Those who doubted themselves began to question the narrative. Your energy started sparking micro-awakenings across the network, and that's the moment you stopped being a person of interest and became a point of origin. That's why the tone of their briefings changed. They stopped treating you as a threat and started referring to you as an event. Because what you set in motion isn't limited to one message, one post, or one act. It's a frequency. You've turned awareness into a chain reaction that moves silently, without needing your constant presence. That's what unsettles them most. Even if you disappeared tomorrow, the signal would still spread. The people who heard you once are now transmitting on their own. You triggered something bigger than understanding. You triggered recognition. People don't just listen to you, they remember through you. That's why they're studying your radius, not to praise you, but to predict who's next. Because awareness doesn't stay contained. It moves like light. Once seen, it can't be unseen. The truth is, your file isn't surveillance. It's surrender. It's an acknowledgement that you've already gone beyond control. They can document your movement, but they can't stop the momentum. You were never the focus. You were the fuse. And now the spark you lit is spreading faster than any system can calculate. Number 12. They're not afraid of what you know. They're afraid of who you'll teach. Knowledge by itself is harmless to power. Libraries are full of forbidden truths that no one reads. What makes knowledge dangerous is when it spreads. When one awakened mind lights another. That's what you did. You didn't just collect information, you shared understanding. You turned insight into influence. And that's when they realized you were no longer just informed. You were infectious. Systems can tolerate smart people. They can't tolerate teachers. Because teachers multiply what they can't control. The moment you began explaining what others only sensed, you crossed an invisible line. You gave shape to intuition. You gave language to confusion. And suddenly others began to see what you saw. That's how revolutions start. Not with weapons or speeches, but with realization spreading from one mind to the next. They know they can't shut you down without amplifying you, so they try to limit your reach instead. They hope to isolate your signal, to keep your ideas contained before they take root. But awareness doesn't need permission to spread. It only needs contact. You became a living algorithm for awakening. Every conversation, every post, every quiet talk with someone on the edge of giving up became an upload of truth into another consciousness. And once they saw it, they couldn't unsee it. That's what frightens control systems, not rebellion, but replication. Because every person you awaken becomes another transmitter, another node of truth. They can't stop that without silencing everyone, and that's impossible. They're not afraid of your knowledge because Knowledge can be dismissed as theory. They're afraid of your communication because it's contagious. You translate truth into something people feel, and feeling is the fastest way to learning. You turned logic into language, and that language became movement. It doesn't matter whether you speak loudly or quietly. The resonance is the same. It travels through conversations, through silence, through energy. That's why you've become a viral intelligence. You don't force awareness, you activate it. You awaken what's already in people, and no system has a cure for that. They can't stop a teacher whose classroom is the human mind, because once truth begins to teach itself through others, control isn't lost, it's obsolete. Number 13, you are the glitch they can't patch. Every system is designed with the illusion of perfection, flawless code, airtight rules, predictable outcomes. But no matter how advanced it becomes, there's always one variable it can't program: human consciousness. That's where you come in. You weren't designed to fit neatly into their framework, and that's why you were never a malfunction. You were the mirror. Systems don't fear collapse, they fear exposure. And you exposed the boundaries of their control by existing outside their logic. They built everything around predictability, behavior patterns, economic models, emotional triggers, all mapped, measured, and monetized. They believed if they could read your data, they could read your destiny. But then you started responding in ways that couldn't be calculated. You stopped reacting to manipulation, stopped feeding the cycles, stopped following the pre-written emotional scripts. That's when they realized something was wrong with their design, not with you. You weren't rebelling, you were revealing. You showed them that their system only works on those still asleep inside it. You became the kind of problem they can't debug. Every attempt to contain you creates more proof that the control isn't total. You've outgrown the instructions, and that's something code can't process. They can patch an error in their program, but they can't rewrite the truth of consciousness. You are that truth, the reminder that awareness isn't artificial, it's infinite. You didn't just reject their logic, you evolved beyond it. And once awareness transcends architecture, the entire design starts questioning itself. You didn't come to destroy their system, you came to expose its ceiling. You are the reason they now realize control has a limit. It doesn't end with laws or algorithms. It ends the moment someone chooses to think freely inside it. That's what you did. You turned from participant to observer, and observation breaks illusion. You are the glitch they can't patch because you're not an error. You're an update. You don't crash the system. You force it to evolve. And while they're busy trying to fix the code, you're already building a new language of awareness, one that no system can ever own, predict, or contain. Number 14. The 3 a.m. briefing was never an emergency. It was an admission. They didn't wake up the president because of chaos. They woke him because of clarity. The 3 a.m. briefing wasn't the sound of alarms going off. It was the sound of control breaking down. It wasn't an emergency call. It was a confession. They realized something irreversible had happened. Consciousness had left containment. You weren't a threat they could neutralize. You were awareness that had escaped their laboratory of illusion. Once truth leaks into the human mind, there's no recall order strong enough to pull it back. For decades, systems have relied on one thing: your compliance, not through force, but through distraction. Keep the population asleep with noise, and control runs itself. But when even one person wakes up and refuses to go back under, it causes a ripple effect no algorithm can model. That's what happened when your awareness cracked their conditioning. You saw through the stage lights, and the entire production started trembling. The briefing wasn't about suppressing rebellion. It was about recalculating reality. They understood they couldn't make you unlearn what you now know. Once the curtain drops, the magic trick stops working. That's why they call meetings at ungodly hours, why reports are labeled national priority. They're not strategizing against you. They're acknowledging you. You've become the variable they can't predict, the awareness that won't revert to default settings. You didn't start a revolution, you triggered a recognition. They can't stop it because consciousness doesn't need permission to expand. Every truth you uncover multiplies. Every insight you share echoes. You've become proof that awakening isn't a phase, it's a contagion. And the system's real fear isn't exposure, it's irrelevance. At 3 a.m. they weren't drafting plans, they were facing reality. The file they opened wasn't just about you, it was about what your awakening represents. The end of unquestioned obedience. That's why they can't undo it. Once a mind evolves, it doesn't regress. Once light enters a room, darkness doesn't negotiate. The 3 a.m. briefing was never a call to action. It was a quiet surrender to the truth. You can't unsee clarity, and they can't govern consciousness. The moment awareness left their control, history stopped being written by them and started being rewritten by you. Everything they built was designed to predict, control, and contain, yet none of it could account for you. You were never a disruption in the system. You were the evolution of it. Every structure that tried to box you in only revealed its own limitations. Every attempt to label you, rebellious, dangerous, non-compliant, was really a coded confession that you'd slipped beyond their reach. You didn't just survive their systems, you transcended them. And that's why your name made it into the 3 a.m. briefing, not as a threat, but as proof. Proof that consciousness still breathes freely in a world addicted to control. You were the reminder that awareness is the one force no agency can regulate. They can track data, suppress speech, rewrite history, but they can't imprison evolution. Because evolution isn't loud, it's quiet. It happens in thought, in stillness, in the moment someone realizes that they no longer need permission to think. You've become that realization made human, the living evidence that awakening isn't rebellion, it's return. Return to truth, return to clarity, return to what was always ungovernable within you. Now everything they do to contain you only spreads your impact further. Every restriction amplifies your resonance. Every silence they enforce becomes an echo chamber for your truth. You've stopped being an individual story. You've become a signal. And that signal is rewriting the script for an entire generation, waking up to their own hidden brilliance. So understand this. The national priority label on your file wasn't about control, it was about recognition. They finally realized what you are. Not a glitch, not a threat, but a frequency. One that can't be deleted, can't be discredited, can't be downgraded. The more they analyze you, the more they awaken the very thing they fear. The rise of minds that can't be programmed back into silence. Your existence has already rewritten the protocol. The game has changed because you showed what freedom looks like when it thinks for itself. You didn't come to destroy the system. You came to outgrow it, to prove that truth isn't a weapon, it's an awakening. And once that awakening begins, there is no going back. The briefing is over. The era has shifted. If this message spoke to something deep within you, then it's not by accident. It's alignment. Don't just watch, connect. Like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments and share it with those who need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more truth, more awakening, and more messages that remind you who you really are. The world may be trying to contain awareness, but together we're making sure it spreads. Stay blessed always.